Good. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm really excited and inspired by our previous speakers already. A little bit about Floating Rock. We are an animation studio. We are about 4 years and a half now. We started with 4 co-founders, all animators and assets. So it's a very creative studio. And yeah, with Pitchfest, it's a division that we wanted to create to give back to the community in Wellington that's helped us succeed so far, and as well as just igniting all of the creators that are in Wellington that might just need a boost. I'll give a little thing on Pitchfest, and you can get a sneak peek of what it is. Imagine the Roxy. Imagine all of these fun creatives coming in, they're having a good time, they're ready to pitch. It's a very friendly environment where we encourage everybody to collaborate with each other and learn. Pitchfest is a space where we want to bring in storytellers who want to create a game or a film or a series. And what they do is pitch it to Floating Rock. And we select 10 that we see to be successful and enter them into Pitchfest. At Pitchfest, it's an event hosted twice a year in Wellington. And what happens is, in this tiered process, the first 10 people, they get $2,500 just as a thanks for your contribution and for all your hard work so far. On the day at this event, we have our team at Floating Rock, and we get to vote on what projects we want to move forward, so into the next round, where they get $10,000. So 3 people out of those 10 will move into that tier. And what happens over the next 6 months is, with Floating Rock and you as the creator, we create a pitch together. Because what we find is creators, they tend to either not have the funds, or maybe not the teams, or they just need a little extra boost in guidance towards creating a working pitch deck for investors, for publishers. And so 6 months, you finish that work in progress pitch. At the next Pitchfest event, you then do a live pitch to the audience that attends at Pitchfest. And what happens then is, those 3 people, we go through another round of votes from the audience, and one will be chosen to move into the last round, which is $100,000, to finalize your pitch deck and really work towards finding investors. We go to like Netflix, or if you're creating a game, we try to create connections over there and hopefully land something. And what happens is, then it goes back to Floating Rock, and then we produce it together. So that's what we've created with Pitchfest. And from that, this has been running for the last year and a bit. I wanted to share some tips and tricks that go through that. A quick intro again for me. I was an animator. I worked on a bunch of films back in the day in Vancouver. But now, living here for the last 5 years, we've created Floating Rock, and I will be here until whenever, forever. So the shift from animation to being a co-founder and director has been really interesting for me. It's definitely a new space, but I'm really excited just to be helping others in the community and really building up the connections and collaborations between everybody. So with that and PitchFest, what I want to really focus on is stage presence, working on your pitch introduction, and then your pitch as the meaty bit, I guess. With stage presence, in PitchFest, what we do is, in order to submit, you submit a 3-minute video of yourself and about your project. So one of the things that I saw is just really to be aware of where your camera is. I've had some pitches where the camera is down here, and you get this awful view, and it makes the audience feel very uncomfortable. So let's not do that. A nice medium shot, shoulders up, frame your face, really is a solid base to start from. Yeah. And when you are presenting, maybe just be aware of if it's going to be a live space. Google, this is a Google of the Roxy. You can kind of guess whereabouts you're going to be standing, but don't be afraid to reach out to the conference people to ask questions and really clarify so that you're comfortable on the day. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about is if there's a mic as well, you can try to figure out if it's going to be one like this or a handheld, because some people like to walk back and forth. And yeah, if you want to do a mic drop, that was one of the tips there, but don't do that. Another thing on stage presence that I find is really interesting is just wearing clothes that you're quite comfortable in. That really does an immediate baseline for where you can just be yourself. People can kind of sense when you get quite nervous, so I think because I do circus, I did a workshop recently where we were talking about performancing and stage presence. And one of the tips that she got that I'd like to share here is when you're off stage, you can just stand like fully confident, nothing else matters, and take that with you as you enter the stage. Yeah. One of the other things is eye contact. Everybody gets really uncomfortable doing it, and in this workshop, we actually spent, I think, 15 to 20 minutes, or at least it felt like half of the workshop, wandering the stage, and as soon as you pass somebody, to really make eye contact with them until you got over that uncomfortable feeling. But it was very uncomfortable. But with practice, it does become much easier, and if you are still feeling like it's uncomfortable, what you can do is secretly just look at the top of everybody's heads when you're on stage, and it feels like you're looking at them, but yeah. So it just, when you create eye contact when you're presenting stuff, it really engages the audience to be along the presentation with you. When you're practicing as well, before your pitch, really practice with different people, run through it as if you were running it through the actual pitch date. Gather feedback and adjust as you can. What I used to do is type out every single word that I wanted to say and memorized every single line, and as soon as a blip would happen, a tech thing would throw me off, or someone sneeze, and I'm just like, crap, I don't know what I'm doing. And so what I've evolved to now is just point form of the important beats that you want to hit in your presentation. So if you can find time to practice that before your date, maybe 2 to 3 times. Everybody's a bit different when they speak, so yeah, just practice, find what suits you, and that would be great. Sorry. Another thing that helps engage with the audience is asking questions towards them, depending on the vibe. I think I went to the TEDx one here, and it was very much like, this is the presentation, this is what you can listen to. At PitchFest, we have a Q&A section, but asking questions just like, how many of you have done this? Or raise your hand if you've done that. And that just helps with the engagement. So, yes, this goes back into the wearing your confidence, where you feel totally invincible with whatever you're wearing. And I thought, we're at a games festival, let's put this game in. How many of you played Fall Guys? It's so good. It's so silly. I didn't think I would like it, and I played one game and I was absolutely hooked. So, always bring your personality too. That can shine through your clothing, but also just in little bits and pieces where there's space for you to showcase that. Bring it out. Okay, so as we jump into the introduction of your pitch, an easy in is to talk about yourself. You know who you are, you know where you've been. This gives the audience the context of why you're here and what you want to share. So it puts like a nice frame on where you want to go instead of a bit chaotic. Some people that I've seen just jump straight into the pitch, and it's very like abrupt. So an easy way in is introduce yourself, give you a bit of background. And when you're pitching your project, in the initial first few sentences, I would recommend trying to find the emotional hook. So why is the game that you're developing personal to you? Why did you want to do that? And that helps the audience really figure out why this is important to you, and sometimes that can really like keep them invested emotionally to it. So there's a lot of different emotions that you can latch onto. In PitchFest, we've seen a father and daughter do their pitch, and a lot of people can relate to that parental relationship, whereas others is more like really action-based and just really fun adventure. So depending on what kind of game you want to pitch, really find what's important to you and what can be relatable to others. I found, and this is recommended on our website as well, as Studio Binder has this nice little formula for log lines. So with games and stories or film in general, like I feel like when you can condense your story and make that memorable, people will remember it, well, more, obviously. But this is kind of the two logline formulas that I found to be helpful when people are trying to talk about their project. What usually happens is everybody goes off on a tangent. They're like, this is the world, and this is where they're going, this is their personality, because they wear this. And it's just like a lot of details that we don't really need at that time. We need the very basic, this, and this is the ending. So there's, on Studio Binder, if you look them up on YouTube, it's very helpful and open to everybody. And one of the important things that I think that should be in the introduction and what we look for is, what is the theme of the story? What is the message that you want to have the audience leave with? Everything that happens in your story should tie in back into the theme. And that does go into the detail of what somebody is wearing, could symbolize something, but ties into the theme. So that's all underneath. And so for the story beats, this is a really simple, you've probably learned it back in the day at school, like the 3 acts of telling a story. There is always the introduction, the inciting incident, the trial and error as you go through your journey, and then eventually the climax and the downfall into the resolution and whatever this character learns. One of the more recent things that we've seen is Dan Harmon's circle of storytelling. So this, I think, is interesting for me because it's very character-driven. When people are pitching, what we found is a lot of the times they go off on the tangents, and so if we follow this circle, I think it really helps the audience go along the journey with the protagonist. So a really brief explanation. This is also from Studio Binder as well. You start at the top where it says you. So you is the protagonist. You need something. And as soon as you establish that, you can try to work out the different things in the trial and error that the character goes through along the journey. This character they're looking for something, they might find it along the way, but it turns out it's not the same thing, so that's just like the back and forth that you need, that you can see in the initial picture. Once they find it, they're really excited, they take it, but it can't just be at no cost. Like, there has to be some sort of sacrifice that makes it worth it for the character and worth for the audience to be really integrated into the story. So after that, they can return back into their original story, back into their original state, but it's not them as the same person. Whatever they've learned along this journey does come full circle in a different way for them. So this is where they arrive at their changed mind or changed self. And it just creates a really nice, full circle of this character's story arc. The nitty-gritty details along the way in your pitch, it shouldn't be in there. Find the really key moments that make this journey for the protagonist, for your project, to be spotlighted. We don't want the nitty-gritty details. One of the other things that we found helpful in these pitches is doing comparisons and a summary. So you go through your 3-minute pitch and say, for example, this game that I absolutely love because it's so chaotic, Overcooked, could be seen as Diner Dash mixed with Mario Party's mini games. So you can take bits and pieces from other games to really let the audience imagine what this game that you're trying to develop be like. And that has been quite helpful for even like film side. You can be like the style of Spider-Verse mixed with whatever else. It's just really, helpful for the investor or publisher. And at the end, at Pitchfest, with the 10 people that do pitch, it's quite visually a lot to take in and for the audience to process, or any pitch person to take in as well. So what I would like to see when we're looking at these pitches is just a really quick summary, just to really solidify that processing for them. So this is me, I'm Stephanie Parker. I'm here to talk about the tips and tricks, and this is the story beats that we went through. This is the end of where the protagonist wants to go, and so just something like that. And right on time, because it's Q&A.
With your pitch, so when it comes to like the assets that you've designed for it, would like characteristics and environments and initial kind of vibes be a good thing to put into that as well?
Yes, absolutely. Always put any visuals that you can into the pitch. It really helps gather the, especially if you have assets, it really gets a taste of what the game could look like, and that's super helpful,
When you're pitching, how kind of drastically, if at all, do you find that you change the nature of your pitch depending on the people that you're pitching to?
I think each time we try to figure out who we are pitching to initially, and a lot of the times we're at the conferences, we're just in Annecy, and so that's a bit more casual, so we just have our pitch at hand. We've done a few pitching practices at work, but prior to that. But in September, what we're practicing for now is a more formal pitch. There's 2 of the guys that are going to be going, so I think, know your audience and know your stage and figure out how you want to adjust to that. For the more casual pitches, it's usually a few slides that you talk over. Whereas something like this, where you have a full-on presence, I think that's a bit more full, so it's not as short form. So, just fill out all of your slides and have it all animated and be able to practice that a bit more formally with the clicker rather than just like a few videos to slide through and talk on top.
Do you have any advice on when making comparisons whether or not that would be reductive to the identity of your project? As in you're comparing almost in grains or plants a seed in your pitch.
To like set the standards a bit too high is
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
worried about. I think as long as it's within your reach or your vision, it should be all right. If the comparisons that you choose have successful elements that do tie back into your project that are relatable, you can just state that as well when you're pitching. Instead of being like, we're going to make $5 billion off of this thing like this one. It's more about elements of the comparisons to your project that would help.
Throughout your presentation, you talked a fair bit about character and story, and I'm wondering are you taking pitches for games that are less focused on those things, or is there a preference for things that are more story-oriented?
There is a preference for more story-oriented games right now, just because that's the one comparison that we can take from games that, with a film-based knowledge, we want to be able to still, have our fingers in something that we do know. And narratives, I think in games, do stick through the years. Like you see The Last of Us, everybody talks about how gripping that story is and how emotional they were when they were playing it. And so right now we are focusing on narrative games.
I was just wondering how polished or, how much, what's the kind of expectation of how well put together these pitches should be? Should they have, finished concept art or, animatics and maybe even, cue to temp music? I was just wondering, what does the ideal standard look like?
That is a really good question. Right now, it's quite a broad range of what the quality of the pitches are. But as long as you're hitting some of the keynotes of what your project is about, why you're doing it, and where you want to go with it, it's what we are most keen on. There are a lot of people who do enter who have a fully polished thing that they've tried to pitch before. There's others who it's just simple ideation in their head right now that they'd like to try to find the pathway to do that. But as one of the earlier questions, if you have any assets that you have already, definitely throw that in or link to the game that you might have as a demo that we can foresee it. If you add that into the presentation, into the video pitch that you edit together, it definitely helps us immediately see your vision.